twice I kind of lost sight of the trail and was heading into bushes or trees where maybe I shouldn't have been. And I have literally come almost face to face, a few short feet um, from a large elk. Um, the tule elk is the elk that's most common in our area. Um, and you can see it's around the Bay Area and across mountainous and valleys in our region. Um, and yeah, what do you do if, like me, you happen to run into one? Now they can be dangerous. You saw those antlers. If you don't want to be on the end of one of those. If the animal is responding to your presence, that means you're too close. Usually, my experience was that they were, um, you know, more startled than I was actually. So, and they didn't respond. But yeah, if you do see them, give them plenty of room. At least 3 animal lengths. So almost, well, not quite a bust length, but they say 3 bust lengths. So because if it does charge at you, you want to give plenty of room to back away. Definitely do not approach elk or their calves. Um, and as I did, if you do encounter them, back away slowly. If you run across them, particularly it's a female elk that can be particularly aggressive during calving season in the early summer months, but the male elk can also be equally aggressive during the breeding seasons, in September, October months. Now, the good thing is that if you are charged by an elk, the best thing is to, you can easily defend yourself, behind a tree in particular. And if you have bear spray, consider using it. This is something, I take camping when out in nature. You can buy this in, camping stores. This is called Counter Sword. It's essentially a strong pepper spray. It comes in a convenient batch so you can keep on your belt. And I do keep it like on a belt or in a big pocket. It's easy to grab rather than in your backpack. So, and I'll mention that several times. It's good for all large encounters. And as the bear spray name implies, even for handling encounters with the American black bear, that's kind of, in our, present in the States. And it's found throughout California, and both shrublands and rainforests. Let's see now. Now, if you're hiking out in bear country, and you do need to make yourself familiar, if you are going into bear country. It's always good to travel in groups, not alone. Now, if a bear does become aware of your presence, they may react defensively. And so it's always good when to make a noise while you're hiking along so you don't startle any animals, talk loudly. And having a bear whistle. This is something else I carry around, usually on a string around my neck, making a lot of noise, as you're going along, particularly if you see an animal, just so you don't scare them. And don't attract them either by wearing, strong deodorants, cosmetics. And like I said, I hinted before, you want to kind of stay on the trail, avoid thick brush. Now, you'll hear that it's advisable to keep the wind to your back, but we know we can't control which way the wind is blowing. But if you have to get out of bear country, that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, keep an eye out for bear signs along the trails, scat tracks, stripped off bark and trees is a giveaway. And if you come across a dead carcass, definitely leave it alone. It's don't have the scouts in your party, for example, poke around at it or get close to it. And definitely, if you see a bear, avoid it. Give it plenty of opportunities to avoid you too. And if it doesn't see you, just keep on going on your way. Back away and give it a lot of safe distance. And again, make noise. as you leave its area. If it's eating away, it'll probably go back to eating, maybe look up at you and just go on its merry way. And again, learn how to keep a bear spray handy and learn how to use it before you head on the trail. When you're camping in bear country, it's very important to bear-proof the campsite. I can tell you numerous stories, and I've had personal experience of bears coming to visit the campsite because they've been attracted by garbage or, food cooking on the campsite. So it's important to haul that garbage out regularly as soon as you've basically, particularly food scraps and packaging and so forth, haul it away regularly. Don't let it accumulate in your campsite. And in the campsites, there will be bear lockers and proper garbage sites that are bird-proof containers. Also, in addition to the food and garbage, the food itself, toiletries, so toothpaste, deodorant, for example. Deodorant I wouldn't advise taking on a trail. Again, should be stored in bear lockers, not in or in airtight containers in your vehicle. Although personally, I don't risk even storing those kind of items in a car, because I've seen many cars as well broken into, doors literally torn off by bears. They're amazingly strong. If you're in a campsite, it's important to check with rangers and local sightings and so forth. But if you're out on the trail, again, you want to be have actually bear-resistant food canisters that you can buy, for example. And you don't want to do things like cleaning, for example, if you go fishing, cleaning food in your camp. And you want to avoid getting like food and onto your clothes, so they don't attract bears to you personally. Now, if you do encounter a bear close, what do you do? Again, if it's unaware of your presence, leave in the direction you came from. If it does become aware of you, and the bear does not leave, don't be threatening. Be calm. Certainly do not yell, and just back away slowly. Do not run. Again, I have encountered bears. They've come. One at my last camp expedition up near Lake Tahoe. Literally, I didn't realize I was on a bear trail, and I opened my tent one morning, and I could see this thing, huge bear walking straight towards me. I just closed the flap of the tent again, and it walked by the side of my tent. But I kid you not, I was within maybe 10, 15 feet of this thing when I opened the tent. But it was used to humans, luckily. And like I said, I was quiet, and it just went on its merry way, thankfully. But if the bear, if the bear does close distance on you, even after you've tried to retreat, walk away. Now, the behavior usually is more out of curiosity, like thankfully, indifferent, and there's more chance that it's predatory. Now, if the bear approaches you, stand your ground, make yourself look bigger by lifting, waving your arms, use nails makers, yell. That's again, use your whistle. Now, what happens if a bear does attack? Now, I don't want to scare anyone. It's very rare that this would happen. And usually it would happen if it's a defensive attack when surprise, particularly like if it's protecting a carcass, which is why I mentioned you want to leave any carcasses on trail alone, or if young in particular nearby, or it's you just, surprised by his presence, you just kind of run into them. So the bear could perceive you as a threat, but remember that bears will often bluff charge. So it will charge at you, but then stop short of actually making contact. In that case, be non-threatening again. You want to tell them, hey, I'm not a threat. Don't run or yell. Stay calm and just back away slowly. And again, consider using your bear spray if it's particularly close. That usually works, and usually that would be the end of the story. Now, if it actually makes contact with you, play dead. Drop to the ground, face down, interlace your fingers over the back of your head, and spread your legs to make it harder for the bear to turn you over. By playing dead, the bear would lose interest in you, most likely, and leave. And bear in mind that attacks are very short in duration, less than 2 minutes usually. But again, this is very rare case. I haven't read in the news of any bear attacks, certainly by black bears in actually attacking people. But if the attack does continue, it may mean that the attack has shifted from a defensive one to a predatory attack, in which case you have to fight back. Now, a non-defensive attack is one where the bear is aware of your presence, has had time to leave, you've had maintained distance, but it continues to close in on you, even after you've tried to, retreat. So again, they could be curious, a bear, indifferent, or predatory. Now, if they would keep coming closer, though, definitely don't play dead. You have to fight back, use the bear spray, intimidate, shout, pick up rocks, sticks, or whatever it takes. Tell the bear that you're not easy prey, and hopefully they'll lose interest. Now, again, I haven't heard of local stories of that happening, but again, it's always good to be prepared. The last big animal potential threat I'll talk about is our local mountain lion, otherwise known as cougars or pumas. And more than half of California is mountain lion habitat, and they're getting closer and closer, as you've probably heard in the news, to our city areas or in local parks and trails. And again, avoidance is the best policy. And luckily, mountain lions do generally avoid people. But yeah, even on some of the local trails here, I always make sure to travel with groups, and it's important to keep people together. If we're with family or younger scouts, they, mountain lions can be attracted to children. So just because of their small size and erratic movement patterns, so they might be recognized as, a potential prey. So, and particularly during dusk and dawn, when mountain lions might be more active, it's best to keep them closer, in the troop, and don't let them linger behind, or way up in front. And again, if you're out on the trail in those kind of areas, make yourself known to any potential cougar, that might be in the area. And yeah, especially if you see or smell a dead animal, again, leave the carcass alone. Cougars often cover their kills with forest debris, but they're very defensive about it. Now, if you do encounter or attacked by cougar, do not turn your back on the cougar or crouch or use high-pitched screams, but be vocal, but not high-pitched. It's important to maintain eye contact with the cougar and always leave it for the room to escape. It's important not to run, to stay calm, because running might actually trigger its catch and kill response. Again, you might inadvertently tell the cougar, hey, yeah, I'm prey, I'm trying to run. Again, make yourself appear as large as possible, open your jacket, wave your arms, and back away slowly. You may have seen on the news about a cougar attack in Utah. It turns out, you could tell that the person being approached by the cougar was doing the right thing, because on the video, he was taking the video, so he was backing away slowly, but you could tell by the animal's behavior. It was lunging, stopping, lunging. That's showing it was being protective. And I heard that it did have some young in the area, so obviously it was being defensive. But you may have heard of cougar attacks actually even in Palo Alto, right, in the on the trails here. It can happen. And if one is attacked, again, which is very rare, I don't want to scare anyone, it's important to fight back with anything at hand, rocks, sticks, or an ink pen. I mentioned an ink pen because I read a story about someone who was attacked on a trail, here actually in Palo Alto, and stabbed the poor animal in the eye with a pen. But hey, you need to protect life in that place. But again, bear spray also works. So that's why it's important to keep them accessible and warm as well in the wintertime if it's cold out there on the trail. Potentially any animal out there on the trail can be a risk. Pigs, well, boars are particularly large, wolves, raccoons, bobcats, wild turkeys. There are quite a few around my workplace where I work down in South San Jose. And they're becoming more active actually as there's less human activity. So again, attacks are rare. Usually, if one surprises the animal, close encounter, when the mother is protecting its young, or they may be more aggressive if they're infected, particularly with rabies that's prevalent in their area. Now, rabies can be carried by any mammal. The most recent numbers I could find for California is that there were 173 cases in 2018, reported cases in California, most of which were in bats. I've seen some bats, actually. I live in Sunnyvale. I've seen some fly around at night, but never heard of a bat attack though. But it's, I'd say the cases in skunks and raccoons in particular that are very active around our homes, I think I'll be more concerned about. Now, how can you tell if an animal is infected? Again, they tend to avoid humans, but if they're totally oblivious, right, of what's going around them, that's not a good sign. They would have a discharge coming from their mouth and their eyes. They'll have wet, matted hair. They might be making really unusual sounds, high-pitched sounds, which you can hear sometimes at night. Hopefully they're being defensive and not actually rabid. And that they would almost look drunk, have wandering around erratically and have a strange gait. Now, if one is bitten, the good news is that there is effective treatments, but it's important to get medical attention as soon as possible. Even if the animal isn't rabid, it's always good to get the wound seen to as soon as possible. So now I'll move on to some smaller perils of nature, smaller animals. And the two, top of the list here in California, snakes and scorpions. Scorpions rare, they're not in the area, but I'll still mention them just because they're cool. Now, the only dangerous venomous land snake in California, of course, as you may be well aware, is the rattlesnake, and they occur throughout the state. They have the rattlesnakes because they have a rattle on the end of the tail, but beware. Sometimes a rattle may be missing, broken off, by an accident, or and of course the very young rattlers that are actually more dangerous because they have less experience with human interactions, might not have a fully developed rattle. There are other snakes, such as lead snake in our area, that are less venomous, but they cause generally minor reactions. But still good to be aware of. But it's good to be able to recognize the rattlesnakes. Any bite can cause a minor injury, and it's important to clean and disinfect the wound if blood is drawn. Now, the good news is that snakes again only attack in self-defense or when feeding, or when they're stepped on or surprised, and well, actually rattlers even won't attack if they're stepped on, but it's the second or third person behind you that might be at risk. And then so avoidance is the best policy. So like I said, recognizing the rattlers is good. The two most common rattlers in our area are the western rattlesnake, which is the most venomous of all the snakes in our area, and they can occur at sea level up to about 8,000 feet. And they're present throughout the state, except in the southern deserts. The western diamondback is equally venomous. Again, occurs at anywhere from sea level up to 7,000 feet, and also is present in the same geographical areas. Now, what happens if one is bitten by a rattlesnake? One should be, aware of symptoms, in someone who's been bitten, so you can, help them or recognize them if you come across them on the trail. Of course, what the bite I hear is, very painful, but someone, who's been bitten, if untreated, they'll have drooping eyelids, their blood pressure would fall, they'll begin to feel very thirsty and also extremely tired and have muscle weakness. They might also have difficulty seeing, breathing, start sweating. Now, if you are bitten or you come across someone who's been bitten, it's important to get away from the area because the snake might still be present and can strike again if it feels threatened. But it's important, particularly for the medical staff who are treating the bite victim. It's important for them to know the actual species of snake. So if one does see the snake, it's good to try and remember the color, so they can administer the right antivenom. So yeah, that's the important thing. It's important to get the bite victim to hospital as soon as possible. So if one is out on the trail, someone has to run off, to get a ranger or call for help, get within cell phone distance and call an ambulance, as soon as possible, even if they have to be airlifted out. While someone's waiting for medical treatment, it's important not to rise the bite area above the heart level. So, it's less chance of the venom poison spreading throughout the body. It's important to keep the bite victim as calm and still as possible, again, to avoid the venom circulating through the body. Remove tight clothing before swelling can happen, around the wound, and let the wound bleed. It's important not to wash it. Again, the venom can actually be used to ID to identify the correct antivenom. But it's okay to put a clean bandage on the wound. But again, don't do the movie thing, in the Western, like cutting the wound and trying to suck it out. I think you're more likely to get sick yourself doing that. And it would cause infection. And also, like I said, don't use the tourniquet. It's important to keep it. That would lead to swelling. Don't apply ice or water. Can use Tylenol to reduce pain, but don't use a blood thinner. Oops, I keep doing that. Sorry, because that can again lead to spread of the venom around the body. So onto scorpions. They're really cool. I wanted to throw them in. And you can see that there are 6 different species that are present in California, although they are not considered life-threatening, except for the bark scorpion that has the most toxic sting of all UoS scorpions. And its venom can produce severe pain, swelling, numbness, breathing problems, again, muscle twitching, convulsions, and if not, and even though death is rare, treatment should be administered as soon as possible. And the good news is that, yeah, anti-venoms are available. Again, the other good thing is that they are not in our area, but in the extreme southeast portion of California, in the desert areas near Arizona. But if one happens to be, out in those desert area, regions, and it's good to be aware that, there are scorpions are active at night. So when obviously you'll have more chances of being stuck. So it's important to be careful. Also during the day, avoid, cracks, plants. Again, don't be putting your hand into a bush or into a hole where they could be hiding. Again, if one is stung by a scorpion, if the victim reacts, and it would vary between individuals depending on the the body reaction. Again, it's important to be calm, not move them too much. Again, don't raise the bite area too high, and it's with a scorpion wound, you can remove blood venom from around the sting by wiping away, using wipes around the sting area. And it is okay to use ice cubes to dull the pain, and also to bandage the area tightly. But again, it is important to get medical attention as soon as possible. All right, so now I'll move on to the passive perils of nature, the plants. And now, of course, they don't lunge at us, but they can still be hazardous. When out on the trail camping, you have to be aware of potential falling branches onto your side. But and you've all are aware of poison ivy in our area, which is maybe the biggest plant hazard in our area in California. It's actually the Pacific poison oak that's endemic in our area. It likes disturbed ground, so you've seen it even in my local parks. I've seen large bushes of it growing, but it's also commonly found in oak woodlands, and hence its name, and also Douglas fir forests. I have a picture of leaves here, but it's very important to know that it can have many different colors, range bronze, bright green, yellow green, or even red, as the season changes. And then also it can grow as a shrub. I've seen it present as big bushes or as a climbing vine in shaded areas. It can also produce a greenish white or tan berries at particular seasons. Now, the reason why it's so such a hazard is because the plant produces a rash-causing resinous oil called urushiol, and it's important to remember that it's produced in all parts of the plant. So not only the leaves, but its stems and roots. And also importantly, that the oil can stay potent for many years, even on dead plants. So it needs to be avoided, dead or alive. Some of the symptoms, if one reacts to it, starts with the itchy skin, where you come into contact with the oil. It can produce reddish patches and streaks on the skin, in addition to hives, small bumps, and also potentially painful blisters. They don't actually, fluid in blisters doesn't actually cause the rash to spread, but still, they're nasty. Symptoms may start straight away or after a few days. I think it depends very much upon, again, one's immune reaction. Now, what happens if one does come into contact with poison oak? It's important to wash the area thoroughly with soap and water, and cool water as soon as possible, straight away, ideally. The rash does can go away after 1 to 3 weeks, and there are over-the-counter treatments for poison ivy, such as that can help with the symptoms, such as calamine. If that doesn't help, the reaction gets more serious, and yeah, it's very important to consult with a doctor. There are other prescription remedies available. The other thing to remember is that one need not come into direct contact with plants to develop these symptoms. You can get it through secondary contamination when the oil spreads onto, your shoes, if you've been out on the trail, on the clothing, gloves, and tools. So it's important to wash those. I was told you can buy, actually, in camping stores, a special wash for poison oak oil, and it's always good to have on hand. So I've forgotten if that can be used on the trail to actually use. Oh, it can be used on the trail. All right, yeah, to treat actual, the skin exposure. All right, so my other category of the perils of nature are those that are hidden. I took this picture up in Larsen. Right, it's very scenic and pristine, and when I was there, I was tempted just to dive in and take the shoes off and run around. But of course, I that's not advisable because there's those unseen hazards that one must always be aware of. Remember, we're sharing the outdoors with a lot of wild animals, and their droppings can harbor, nasty things such as roundworm eggs, and infection typically occurs by accidental ingestion, by being exposed to through contaminated food or soil. Hantavirus, you may have heard of, has spread in mouse droppings and urine, and even on local trails and old farming areas. It's actually prevalent in our local areas, and if one does get infected with that, it causes a pulmonary, lung infection. Also, the urine of possums, deer, skunk, raccoons, mice, they may also contain bacteria that cause leptospirosis, which causes, if one is infected, fevers, chills, muscle aches, jaundice as well, and severe abdominal pains. Again, these are all easily treated with antibiotics, but again, there's a risk of catching it through contaminated water. So whenever one's on the trail, it's important to wear, protective clothing and footwear, and avoid contact with, potentially contaminated water. So the other thing is, sushi is not advisable to be eaten out on the trail. If you're going fishing, make sure it's well cooked. Aeromonas is a bacterium commonly found in fresh and brackish water, and it can cause disease in stressed fish and other amphibians in the pond, for example. People can become infected with this bacterium if they handle infected fish or accidentally swallow contaminated food or water. Again, the infections can be treated, but you want to avoid them because the bacterium can cause severe GI problems, skin infections, if they get into an infected wound or scrapes, for example. The bacterium that causes botulism can be found in the intestines of many marine and several species of freshwater fish. And the problem is that the affected fish can show few signs of illness. They might have pale gills, or pale coloring, or swelling of the abdomen, but it's regardless, it's important to cook the fish well. If someone's infected with botulism, can affect one's vision, and also actually lead to paralysis if it's not treated. So again, to protect oneself, avoid fishing in areas where there's, if you see dead fish or waterfowl, and I think it should obviously be obvious if fish is infected, and also to cook the fish well. Lyme disease is also a common kind of hidden peril in our area. It's caused by a bacterium that's transmitted by the Western black-legged tick, which feed on lizards, birds, mammals, and particularly there. Now, when I was doing my research on this subject, it's been reported that something like 15% of ticks are infected, and it's the nymphs and adult females are the primary hosts, and that you want to avoid exposure to them, and which is prevention of exposure is the best policy to reduce your risk of potentially getting Lyme disease. So if one's been out on the trail, it's important to inspect your clothing, exposed skin, if you've been, and actually you might want to inspect yourself for several days because they're quite small. Now, if you do see a tick that's come onto you, and I think I would say so I'm getting itchy all of a sudden. I was going to say I would say I think of half of the time that I've been out on the trail with my family, we've come back with a tick. So even before we come back into the home, we're careful to inspect ourselves. And my son, I think, I kid you not, half a dozen times I've had to remove a tick with using tweezers, but from the head. It's important not to squeeze it, and you want to take out the entire tick. Now, what does a tick look like? I have some pictures here. You can see, like I said, it's the nymph and adult females that tend to spread the bacterium. And I have to give it, you can see the scale, something like 3 millimeters. By scale, you have the sesame seed and the poppy seed there by scale. So they are visible and easy to remove. But I've also found them just crawling around my clothes, or like I said, the nymphs primarily are found in dense woodlands, in oak areas, or madrone trees, or in Douglas fir forests. And also they're very common in areas carpeted with leaves. So what the nymphs tend to do, they're looking for hosts and so they stay on top of the pile of litter or on branches, logs. So they were, at a distance of something like that. They tend to be off the ground 3 to 4 feet. So they're they're looking for any passing animal, human, deer, whatever, to latch onto. They can also be present, in shedding leaves. So if one has, gets into contact with grass or low-hanging branches or leaves, then one's increasing your chance of exposure. The females can actually climb low-level vegetation in grassland, woodlands, brush, and they can wait there for hours or days for potential hosts to come by for them to jump onto. So again, staying in the center of trails, avoiding contact with the grass or brush, to reduce one's exposure, it's a good idea there. And also wearing full-length pants, long-sleeve shirts, tucking your shirt into your pants and tucking your pant legs into your socks to avoid the exposure of ticks to your skin is always a good idea. And one thing I typically do is putting the clothes into the wash when you're home. And the 1 hour dryer cycle at high heat will kill any ticks that may have crawled into your clothing. Some of the symptoms and treatment for Lyme disease, in most patients, they can begin as a slow expanding rash that typically appears a few to or up to a month after a bite if an infected tick. Now, again, I don't want to scare you, and so remember that, you know, there's something like a 10% chance that the tick was infected. But if you find a tick attached, you know, like I said, it's important to remove it immediately, regardless. You can take it actually to, I know a testing lab to see if that tick did actually carry the bacterium. I've had to do that when my son was younger, and we've discovered tick, you know, tick a day or two after our trek. And luckily, it's always been negative. Also, showering, so you know, get rid of the ticks is a good idea there. The good news is that there is antibiotic treatment for Lyme disease that reduces the duration of the rash to about a week or so. But if it's not treated, patients can experience fatigue, flu-like symptoms, you know, during the initial stages of the illness. Without treatment, other symptoms can occur days to months or even years after being bitten, which can include rashes, joint muscle pains, headaches, memory loss. Worst case symptoms, you know, if one's not aware of being infected, it can result in arthritis or other neurological complications later on in life. But again, I think it's becoming very rare with effective treatment. When out on the trail, be careful with drinking water, right? It's always good to carry clean water with you. But streams, rivers, lakes, it's good to be aware that they can be contaminated with, you know, a variety of bacteria, viruses, parasites, as well as other contaminants. Giardia, I think that's how it's pronounced, is a microscopic parasite that causes nasty GI infections. It's endemic in the soil and water, which is one good reason not to eat snow, unless it's, you know, yeah, it's never a good idea. Cyanobacterial and algal blooms like occur in, you know, in the bay can be harmful as well. Some produce toxins that can cause illness. So yes, one has to be very careful with the source of water when out on the trail. So I've come close. Yeah, now I am at the end of my talk. Like I said, I did a lot of research. I went to a lot of government and wildlife and, you know, medical sites to gather this information. And I'm happy to share these slides with anyone who would like to have them. These are some useful websites, and that's my email there. If you'd like to reach out to me, like I said, I'll be happy to share these slides with you. So thank you. Yeah, any comments? Anyone had any close encounters out in nature they'd like to share, or have any questions? Happy to take them now. Usually, when I was Brian Bailey, when I was setting up this course, he shared with me. I think he had a recent encounter with a cougar out on the trail. I think yes, close to Palo Alto as well, Stanford area, out on the trail. He told me it was stalking him actually for a few minutes, but yeah, he knew the right the right moves, not to panic, to, you know, keep his always keep it facing, and eventually lost interest in him. And luckily he was with someone as well. If there's a group and one doesn't pose as an easy prey, then yeah, they rapidly lose interest.
So there's a few comments in the.
Yes. Sorry, I'm not seeing those. I should.
No, that's okay. One is well, there was one comment about using Technu for poison oak, and it does work really well.
Okay.
It is useful in the backcountry, but remember, when you're in the backcountry, you want to follow leave no trace principles. So you need to take your wash water 200 feet away from, from a stream or anything in
Yes.
order to use that technique. I've also heard that a lot of the really effective part of technique is scrubbing vigorously. So you basically are removing that very tenacious oil from your skin.
Right. Yes. Oh yeah, no,
Uh,
good. Yeah, that's very good to have. Yeah, you're right on the trowel.
Yep. Some hints as far as preventing ticks. Wear insect repellent, probably
Yes.
containing heat. And then if you have clothing that is treated with permethrin,
Ah,
the insect repellent clothing, that also seems to help.
okay. Oh yeah, I wasn't aware of that. That's good advice. Thank you. Yeah.
And there's
You
a
can
question about,
actually, just to comment on that, you can actually, there are some sites that will actually sell you clothing that is actually pre-treated with permethrin. It
Oh,
lasts
yes.
for several washes, and then eventually you need to retreat it, and you have to go through some process of make a big, bucket or a garbage can with it, and you soak your clothing in it, and then let it dry. But
okay. Yes.
yeah, I've seen it. Ex Officio is one brand that has the pre-treated clothing.
Okay. I should look into that. Like I said, it's maybe the most common hazard I've come across. Thank you.
There is a question about how to identify the western black-legged tick, since the incident having ticks cling is higher in the outdoors. Do we have other ticks in our area, or is it pretty much just the western black-legged?
Yeah, like I said, when I did my research, that was the one that was mentioned, as being the one endemic here. But I actually, when I was looking at that screen, I know the ticks I've pulled off myself and now with my son, they were, I mean, dark black and different shape. It's just that they, but it's sometimes hard to make out the coloration. If I go to that slide, where was it? Yeah, it might be hard to see the color, but particularly if they're swollen with blood, they can actually expand. But yeah, I've seen them, the ones I've found it myself, even myself, kind of completely black in shape. So but but like I said, when I was doing my research, this was the one that was identified as being the one that carried the tick. I know, I mean, of course, Lyme disease is endemic across the United States, particularly we used to live in New Jersey, and yeah, they were swarmed in our backyard, and I know they were a different species. I think I saw different pictures of ticks when I was doing my research. But like I said, I wanted to focus on the species here.
And I think Lyme disease is crossing most of the tick species nowadays.
Yes.
I'm not certain about that, but I believe it is.
Right. Yes. I try and avoid anything crawly like that. If it gets on me, I would quickly brush it off. Don't take any risks.
If anyone has a question or wants to share a personal experience, just come off a mute and you can do so. There is a question about typically we don't want to use tourniquet for snake bites, but is there ever a situation where you might need to?
Yeah, actually, I don't know enough, honestly, from a medical perspective. Uh, because
You know,
when I was preparing this slide, the presentation, that was news to me as well. I thought you would want to maybe prevent, the venom from spreading. I thought, would it be better to tighten it? But like I said, I went to like WebMD, for example, and the consensus and other medical sites for bright treatments, and yeah, or the advice was consistent that it shouldn't be tightened. Um, so yeah, so I didn't come across that kind of information. Right.
yeah, I
I don't know.
don't, the last I've seen says no tourniquet at all as well.
Right. Yes.
Unless there's bleeding. Yeah, I mean, if it's uncontrolled bleeding that you're worried about somebody bleeding out, then
Right. Yes.
Obviously you're going to use a tourniquet,
Right.
even if
Yes,
there's
exactly.
a snake involved.
Yes.
Yeah, we got one of the kind of backpacking experts in our troop reads a lot of blogs from first responders for wilderness situations, and he forwarded something about rattlesnakes recently. There were a couple of rattlesnake bite incidents within a week of each other in Yosemite, and this one of the victims' friends and others discussed whether to apply a tourniquet. They decided to put one on the subject's left leg above the wound. A few months later, once they were connected with by phone to a park ranger or paramedic, they were advised to immediately remove the tourniquet. Applying a tourniquet to a limb that has been envenomated blocks blood flow and could lead to tissue damage.
Oh, all
For
right.
the same
I
reason, do not
see.
apply ice to a rattlesnake venom.
That's why. Yeah, that makes sense. Now I understand. Yes. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought that was very
and
interesting.
my understanding also is that most adult rattlesnake bites are not, they're dry bites, or at least very little venom, because the snake knows you're too big to swallow. Why should I waste my venom on you?
Right. Yes.
The ones that are more dangerous from the standpoint of being envenomated, or getting the venom injected, is the baby snakes, the little ones, because they haven't learned how to control their venom injection yet. So when they bite, they just give you everything they've got, and it's a lot more.
Right. Yes. Makes sense.
I think that's true. You're playing the odds, though. It happens to be in the both instances in that example in the from the Yosemite paramedics. Both were bitten by adults, larger snakes, and both needed evacuation. And they ended up, they were being treated. Once they got evacuated, they were treated in the hospital. And they had to stay in the hospital for a week. I think they had sufficient venom in that case to justify the hospital stay.
You're never going to make that call out in the field.
Exactly.
To say, oh, it's a dry bite. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're always going to call first responders and evacuate the patient.
Yeah.
So how much time do you have after the rattlesnake has bitten you before you reach the paramedics or so? Do you have enough time, like an hour? Just for the panic not to get...
Yeah, there's no need to panic. The rattlesnake venom it's a hemolytic, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Rattlesnakes are mostly so they mostly destroy blood cells. And it's not like, instantly and you're dead. It depends on the kind of snake. We don't have coral snakes in California. Coral snakes are neurotoxins, and they tend to be much more rapid, and then of course extremely lethal and extremely quickly. But a rattlesnake, you've got a fair amount of time, and it's basically just going to get it's the amount of damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the people who evacuated, I'm sure it took them several hours to get, in one of the cases, the victims, it was a husband and wife that were traveling. The victim's wife basically had to hike out, like 20 miles to overnight to get to a place where they could contact the rescue. And they did manage to get him out and to safety and, to the hospital. But he was not himself able to hike out, so she had to leave him. Unfortunately, apparently there was another hiker that came along and stayed with him. So, yeah.
Great. No, that was very useful information. Yeah, I've learned something today. Thank you. So.
Well, I think that's our time and our chat session. We have no more questions in chat.
Great. So again, if anyone would reach out, would like these slides, I'm more than happy to share. So again, my email is there. All right, but thank you for listening. And again, yeah, thank you for your feedback. I've learned something. I enjoyed giving this, and I hope you learned one or two things as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you all. I'm
you.
going to end the meeting.
Yes. Thank you for hosting.
All right. Bye.
Bye there.
Thanks. Bye-bye.